Welcome back, everyone. We're diving back into To Kill a Mockingbird. Still kind of reeling from Tom Robinson's trial, right?
Oh, absolutely. That trial was more than just a courtroom drama.
Way more.
It really shook Maycomb up, and exposed all those deep-seated prejudices.
No one escaped untouched.
Nope.
So today, chapter 26.
Yeah.
Scout starting 3rd grade, Gem's in 7th. Seems like life just goes on, after such a crazy summer.
It's deceptive, though, isn't it?
Cool.
Like, on the surface, Maycomb's moved on, right? Scout's worried about homework. Gem's trying out for football.
Normal kid stuff.
Exactly. But Lee's sneaky. She uses these little everyday things to show us how the trial's still there, simmering under the surface.
Like the whole town's holding its breath, pretending everything's normal.
Right.
But it's so not like the way the adults treat Scout and Gem. It's like they made this pact to be extra nice to them, in spite of Atticus.
Oh, it's so patronizing. As if the kids are somehow to blame for what their dad did. But it shows you something about Maycomb. They can't deal with Atticus defending Tom Robinson. It clashes with their own prejudices.
Right.
So they take it out on the kids, almost like they pity them.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that blows my mind. Atticus gets reelected to the state legislature. No opposition. How does that even make sense?
It's a real paradox, right? Shows how complicated Maycomb is.
Definitely.
Some people resent Atticus for, challenging their views,
Yeah.
But there's also this grudging respect for his integrity, his commitment to what's right.
But this is the South in the 1930s.
Exactly. People were used to a certain way of things, and Atticus, well, he messed with that.
So they reelect him out of habit. Or maybe deep down they know he's a good guy, even if they disagree with his choices.
It's definitely something to think about.
For sure. Now let's switch gears a bit. We see Scout still fascinated by Boo Radley. But her feelings have changed.
Oh, yeah?
From being scared as a kid to being more.
Curious now. Even a little guilty, maybe. That shift is super important. It shows Scout's growing empathy. She's trying to understand Boo as a person, not the monster everyone makes him out to be.
Remember that daydream she has? About just casually talking to Boo on the porch?
It's not just a kid's fantasy.
No.
It's her wanting to connect with him, to see him as an individual.
But Atticus is still warning her about the Radley place. He even says Nathan Radley shoots at shadows. It's almost funny.
Almost.
But it also shows how much fear and prejudice there is around Boo.
It's like Boo's become this scapegoat for everything Maycomb's afraid of, anything weird or unexplained.
Yeah.
It's blamed on him. And you know what's interesting?
What?
Atticus, he warns Scout, but he doesn't totally shut her down. Maybe he senses that understanding Boo is part of her growing up, Part of understanding how complicated the world is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of complicated,
Yeah.
current events day at school. What a mess.
Oh, tell me about it.
It was like the kids were just throwing out random news with no clue about the bigger picture.
Yeah, total chaos. And right in the middle of it all, we see how hypocritical Miss Gates, Scout's teacher, really is.
Oh, man. That was intense. She gives this whole passionate speech about how awful it was that Hitler persecuted the Jews.
All about injustice and prejudice. And then she turns around and says the most prejudiced stuff about black people right there in Maycomb.
I know, complaining about how they need to stay in their place and everything.
He's like, what? Didn't you just finish talking about equality?
You see, it's this thing called cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
Miss Gates, she's trying to balance what she says she believes in with the prejudices she grew up with. She can condemn injustice far away, but she doesn't see it right in front of her.
So is she being deliberately two-faced?
Yeah.
Or is she just clueless about her own hypocrisy? How can someone be that blind to their own biases?
It's a tough question, and honestly, there might not be a simple answer. But what Lee's doing is making us face this very real human thing. We all have blind spots.
True.
And it's hard to admit that, especially when we think of ourselves as good people. Right. And poor Scout, she's totally confused. She tries to make sense of it all, asks Gem for help, but well, let's just say he doesn't react the way she expected.
Not at all. Jim just explodes. All this anger, shows the trial really messed him up more than anyone realized.
Yeah, it's like all that pain and frustration he's been holding in just bursts out.
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking, because Scout has no idea why he's freaking out like that. She still wants answers, trying to figure out how Miss Gates can say one thing and do another, but Gem, He's dealing with something way deeper, you know? He's lost that innocence.
It's true. He's been forced to see the world for what it is, and it's painful.
And the way Atticus handles it, it's so different from the rest of Maycomb, you know? They're all sweeping things under the rug, pretending nothing happened. But Atticus, he doesn't dismiss Jem's anger. He doesn't make excuses for Miss Gates either.
No, he doesn't.
He explains it to Scout. Says Jem's outburst, it's his way of coping, a way of dealing with all the trauma.
It really shows how wise Atticus is.
Really.
He gets it. Healing takes time. And sometimes you gotta be angry to heal.
And he doesn't push Jem to talk or anything. He just lets him feel what he feels, gives him that safe space.
Exactly. He's just there for him.
You know, this whole thing with Miss Gates, her being so hypocritical about prejudice, it reminded me of Scout and Boo Radley.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, they both kind of force us to look at our own biases, our own blind spots.
You're right.
We might condemn something in one situation, but then ignore it or even justify it in another.
Yeah.
Like Miss Gates with Hitler and then black people, you know?
Exactly.
And Maycomb loves Atticus, but they treat Boo Radley like dirt.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. Are we all kind of be selectively moral like that? I mean, think about it. Have you ever judged someone without really knowing them?
Yeah.
Based on what you've heard or whatever?
Yeah. It's a tough question. And that's what makes To Kill a Mockingbird so powerful. Lee doesn't give us easy answers.
Nope.
She just gives us these characters, all flawed and complicated, and makes us face these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
We're constantly being challenged to think again, to look deeper.
Exactly, to see beyond the surface.
You know that part where Scout imagines just chatting with Boo Radley on the porch? It's so sad, but hopeful too.
It is.
Like she's longing for a world where people aren't so quick to judge.
It's a beautiful image, isn't it? So different from the reality of Maycomb, where fear and prejudice win out over kindness.
But is it just a kid's fantasy? Or is Lee saying that this kind of radical empathy is actually possible? Even in a messed up world like Maycomb, what if we all tried to see things like Scout? To be curious about people who are different instead of scared or judgmental.
That's a powerful thought. And I think it's at the heart of this book. To Kill a Mockingbird isn't just about this one town, you know?
No.
It's about being human, about good and evil, love and hate, justice and injustice.
And it's still relevant today because those struggles are still happening. Like Maycomb with race and class and prejudice, we're dealing with those same things, just in different ways.
Absolutely. And that's why books like this are so important.
Why?
They give us a place to think about our own beliefs, our own biases, to challenge ourselves and imagine a world where things are fairer.
Not just reading for fun, but
Yeah.
reading to learn and grow.
Exactly. To understand ourselves and the world better.
I love that. And you know, Jem's outburst, I think it's more than just teenage angst.
There's definitely something deeper going on.
It's like he's realized the world doesn't always make sense. Good doesn't always win. And people we think are good, well, they can be really messed up too.
Yeah,
That's got to be tough for a kid who's just trying to figure things out.
it is.
Makes you wonder how it'll affect him in the long run. Will he become cynical? Or will he hold on to his ideals, even after all this?
It's the big question, isn't it? Lee doesn't tell us for sure, but we see hints of both.
Like what?
We see his anger, sure. But we also see how loyal he is to his family, how much he believes in Atticus.
It's like a reminder that even when things are bad, even when we're let down, we still get to choose how we react.
We can be bitter and angry, or we can choose hope.
And that choice, maybe that's the most important one we make.
It might be, because it's not just about surviving the tough times, it's about finding the good in ourselves and using it to make things better.
I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to move into the last part of our deep dive into chapter 26.
Yeah, let's do it. We've talked about, the trial's impact, Miss Gates and Scout and Boo Radley. But
Why?
remember the beginning of the chapter? Scout and Jem going back to school.
Yeah. Seems kind of ordinary compared to everything else.
Right. But it says a lot about kids,
What do you...
how resilient they are, how they can find normal even when everything's crazy.
Oh, I see. Like, they just went through this whole thing with the trial, seeing all that prejudice, their dad being attacked.
Exactly. They were right in the middle of it.
And yet, they go back to school.
Yep. Ready to learn, hang out with their friends, move on.
It's like they still believe things can be better. Where does that come from, I wonder? Nature. How they were raised.
That's a good question. Probably a bit of both. I mean, Scout and Jem, they have a good family.
True.
Yeah.
Atticus teaches them about justice and compassion.
And Maycomb, messed up as it is, it's still their home.
Right. Plus, Scout's so independent, always curious.
And Jem, he's got this strong sense of fairness. He's really starting to understand people who are different, you know?
They each have their own strengths.
They do. And they use them to deal with growing up in a place full of prejudice.
It reminds us that being resilient isn't about never having problems.
No.
It's about finding the strength to keep going, keep learning, keep believing.
Exactly. Keep hoping for better.
You know that thing with Scout wanting to just talk to Boo Radley?
Yeah.
We said it's symbolic, right?
Right.
But what if it's also a challenge to us, the readers?
Oh, I like that.
Instead of thinking of Boo as this creepy guy hiding in the shadows.
What if we try to see him like Scout does?
Exactly. What if we imagined him actually coming out and telling his story? What would we learn?
That's a great question. What would he teach us about the world?
Yeah.
About people? About all the things we've been talking about?
It's like Lee's saying, hey, finish the story yourselves, use your imagination, be empathetic.
I love that idea. It shows how books can make us think differently, challenge us to see things in new ways.
And Scout and Jem, they do that throughout the whole book, right?
Yeah.
They question everything, don't just accept things the way they are.
They're looking for something better, a fairer way to live.
And they remind us that we can do that too.
Absolutely. We can choose to just watch things happen, or we can try to make things better.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into chapter 26,
Yeah.
the big takeaway, I think, is this. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't just accept what you're told. Imagine a different world.
Embrace all the messy stuff, the hard truths, and never stop trying to understand yourself and the world around you.
Well, folks, that's it for our look at chapter 26 of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We had a blast. We hope this got you thinking.
Keep those conversations going.
And until next time, keep reading, keep thinking.
And keep diving deep.